Welcome in, everybody, to the It's Official podcast. I'm Jeremy Plonk from First Bet alongside Jeff Siegel. We do this podcast every Tuesday, taking a look at 5 hot topics in racing. If you're joining us in the first Preakness Wager Guide, welcome in. Hope you're enjoying the guide as well. We'll do this podcast on Friday for some handicapping every week and our podcast on Tuesday for our reactions and opinions. That's what you've got right here. So, Jeff Siegel, let's talk. It's Preakness week, right? Preakness 148 at Baltimore. Coming up on Saturday, you've got the Kentucky Derby winner, Mage, against everybody else. If they're picking teams in the gym, Mage was on one side and he kind of looked around and didn't know who else to pick second, third, fourth for the Derby. So he's got all new teammates here for the Preakness.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's getting to a point now where you expect the Derby winner to come back and you don't expect anybody else. It's a different era, different strategies, different way of training horses. And so Mage has got new shooters to deal with. But if you like Mage, you're comforted by the fact that none of the horses that are in the Preakness are horses that were considered advanced enough or good enough to run in the Kentucky Derby. Yeah. So he's got that Kentucky Derby, and now he's kind of facing the leftovers. Now, that sounds good. There's some leftovers that can run. I mean, it's not like we're talking about some second string group of horses. But Mage, flashy horse with the big blaze. He's easy to see on the racetrack. And his trainer, who has never had a horse quite this good. But I think that so far it's hard for me to criticize what's been going on. I mean, trainer's done a great job. And I just do think that we're going to see Mage come back and do it again, just like he did in Kentucky.
All right, let's take on our 5 topics as we do each and every week, and we are going to set the stage for Preakness 148 at Baltimore, a discussion about Mage and how he comes into this race, also that new era of training, if you will, and scheduling of races. We'll get into that discussion as well. What are the strengths and weaknesses of Mage? But let's talk first, Jeff, about his opponents in this year's Preakness Stakes. There are 7 newcomers to the race, new shooters, as they've been called over the years. New shooters have won the Preakness each of the past 3 years, in 2020, 2021, and 2022. That's not typical. I mean, you go back into the early 80s, and there was a little bit of a run there where the new shooters had some success, but they won 3 out of 4 years, I believe, in 80, 82, 83, when Codex won it for Lucas, the first of Lucas's Preakness Stakes wins back in 1980. But then since that, in the early 80s, it'd been hit or miss for horses not in the Kentucky Derby, running and winning in the Preakness Stakes. We always get a handful of new shooters, no question about that. Some locals, some horses who are a little less developed in going into the Derby, and then some horses that just simply were a cut below the Kentucky Derby quality. So we've got any number of mix of those kind of horses in this year's Derby, and there are just simply fewer of them out of the Kentucky Derby, Jeff, and it's a statistical trend that I've been tracking for years. Back when I did the research for NBC Sports for 18 years of the Triple Crown, I put this graphic together back in the 2010s. I had to update it because it's starkly changed in the last 4 years. But look at the average number of Derby returnees who came back to the Preakness. In the 1970s, it was just under 5. That number stayed pretty strong. In the 90s, it actually rose a bit to 5.7. Then 2000s, 2010 stayed pretty steady. And now in the last 4 years, including this year, we've had 3 Derby entrants, 3 Derby entrants, 3 Derby entrants, and now this year just 1. So 10 so far in the 2020s, making that average up for 2.5. That includes this year with Mage. It's definitely a precipitous drop-off, but it's also very new. I mean, you don't have to go back very far to find when 5 and 6 horses were running back in the Kentucky Derby, from the Kentucky Derby into the Preakness Stakes. So I don't know. Is it a one-off this year? I mean, this year's an exception, right? I mean, to go from like an average of 4 to 3 the last couple of years, that's, noticeable, but that could be, one horse here or there is injured, and that changes a very small sample size. But just having one this year makes it feel like there's something more muck.
Yeah, I think that I don't think this is a one-off. I think as we get farther and farther away from my era when I was growing up, where the Preakness was maybe the second most prestigious race for 3-year-olds, maybe the Belmont and the Travers, and that was pretty much it. There was no Breeders' Cup. So when you won the Preakness, you had won a classic, an American classic, and it not only was prestigious, but it was very valuable with regards to stud potential and things like that. Nowadays, there's so many more opportunities now for 3-year-olds to earn
Mhm.
purse money that is very close to the Preakness. Trainers don't want to run back in 2 weeks anymore. That's another. No, I wouldn't say it's new anymore. I'd say it's 30 to 40 years now, where people now trainers have figured out that we don't want to run horses back in 2 weeks. That's a theory, a training theory that has kind of overwhelmed the sport in the last few decades, but it's really coming to pass now, especially when you have trainers saying, why should I run back in 2 weeks for the Preakness when I can point for the West Virginia Derby or the Ohio Derby or this Derby or that Derby?
Yeah.
Everybody's got a Derby, and because of slots, the purse money is pretty close to the Preakness. So
Yeah.
coming back in 2 weeks after running in the having a physically hard taxing race in this Kentucky Derby is not something trainers want to do. And, I mean, horses aren't as sound as they used to be. That's just the way it is. We don't breed them like we used to. We breed now for the 2-year-old in training sale. I don't care how long you last, as long as you can breeze in 10 flat and March, you're good. You're good to go. So there's a lot of contributing reasons, which affects how trainers look at the Preakness that they didn't look before. It was a big deal when I was growing up. Now it's a nice race to win, but not if I have to run them back in 2 weeks and sacrifice the rest of the year. So get used to it. Now the Derby winner is always going to come back, except for last year. You see what I'm saying? Even last year we had a situation where the connections thought maybe it wasn't the best path. But if you want to win a Triple Crown, you're going to come back, and that's why Mage is here, and that's why pretty much nobody else is. So I think that's the way we're going to have to live with this race from here on in.
And it's not like the Belmont has totally just pulled away all the Preakness horses, because I went back and looked. Mm-hmm. There were 3 horses in the Belmont last year from the Kentucky Derby. There were 3 in the Preakness. The average of the Belmont to Derby to Belmont is 4 horses a year the last couple of years. So that looks very similar to those numbers we just saw in the graphic previously of like horses who may, Derby to Preakness, Preakness to Belmont. It's not like there are 20 horses in the Kentucky Derby and 11 of them show up for the Belmont. That attrition is immediate after the Kentucky Derby. Whether the Preakness is 2 weeks away or 5 weeks away, the attrition is immediate, and it happens even with the Belmont Stakes. We're just not seeing. We haven't seen more than 5 horses make that move. I look back the last 6 years, 5 from the Derby to the Belmont. So you're talking 20, 70%, 75% of the Derby field goes away before the Belmont. This is not just on the Preakness. This is on the way all these horses are being conditioned, and the way they're being campaigned, the way they're being treated for therapeutics after races for recovery, and the time that it takes for those recovery medications to clear the system, the NSAIDs and things like that, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, things like that are used for recovery with these racehorses that take time to clear the system till they can get back and train hard again. These are all factors that play into it. So, we are where we are. I mean, there was a time absolutely not that long ago where Two Phils would be the 8-5 favorite in this year's Preakness. The way he ran the Kentucky Derby, that is a Preakness winning race. Everybody knows it. They'd have came back and they'd have bet that horse to favoritism. Like Bodemeister was favored over I'll Have Another in the Preakness.
Right.
That kind of race gets respected. You say, well, Larry Ravelli said he doesn't want to bring a horse back on 2 weeks and it's just too quick. The problem with some of that is it might be for this individual horse, but it's not a general statement, because there are a thing called statistics and databases where we can look these things up. Larry, we don't even have to think very long. Larry Ravelli won the big turf sprint on Derby Day with no balls off a 2-week layoff at $70-some. He just did it on Derby Day. So to say Larry Ravelli would never run a stakes horse back on 2 weeks, he just won on Derby Day doing the exact same thing. In fact, he's run 15 horses back this year on 2 weeks or less. And he's a 27% trainer going back to 2012 with 273 starts on 15 days or less. So these guys do it, but they do not want to do it in this series for whatever number of reasons. Is the Derby that demanding? Not like another race. It's not like you lost the Woodford at Keeneland and can come back and run in the Churchill Downs turf sprint. I get it. The races are different in their demands, but it's interesting. The way these horses are purposefully being campaigned, and a lot of it is in the name of the safety of the horse and things like that, because A, that's true in a lot of cases, and B, it's a very, very good excuse to say, I really just don't want to run there. I want to
Right.
wait for something else that's easier, or have a better horse for later in the year, or keep more starts in the runner. Whatever the case is, you always have that I'm doing what's right by the horse statement that buys you the complete lack of skepticism. Nobody's going to be skeptical of you saying that you want to do what's right by the horse.
Right. No, that's true. And I, like I say, I remember back. I mean, I just bring this back with, because it's been 50 years with Secretariat and Sham. Nowadays, there would be absolutely zero chance Sham would come back in the Preakness because they wouldn't do it, and even when I had our horse, Captain Bodgett, in '97, we got beat a short head or whatever by Silver Charm. Yeah. Nowadays, we probably wouldn't run back. We ran back in the Preakness, and it was like an automatic play. Now there's nothing automatic about coming back, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Again, part of it is because our horses aren't as sound as they used to be, and the second reason is there is such a proliferation of huge races, in July and August and September that you can point for. You don't need to risk the possibility that maybe your horse won't handle the quick turnaround. So you wait. You wait for the Haskell. You wait for the Jim Dandy. You wait for all these other major races and Derby. The Pennsylvania Derby is $1 million race. You wait for that, So I don't think it's changing anytime soon. It's unfortunate because the Preakness is an American classic and it deserves to have a high quality field. And this one has the Derby winner. At least we have that. Okay. We didn't have it last year, as I mentioned. And it's an important race for Mage because if he wins this race, then he's got a chance at the Triple Crown. And that's not going away anytime soon, the quest for a Triple Crown. So we'll see how Mage performs and whether or not the quick turnaround will impact him. And that's something the gambler has to figure out. I mean, do you take him back? Do you assume he's going to run just as well as he did 2 weeks ago or better or not? Is he going to quote unquote bounce? That's what the handicapper has to figure out.
Yeah, we've seen over the years, 36 Derby winners have gone on to win the Preakness and then had that shot for the Triple Crown. So when you think about 148 years of the Preakness, the races weren't always in the same order, that kind of deal like that. It always wasn't a Triple Crown. Even, before like 1915, 1919, they really weren't even talking about Triple Crown in the context of the three races together. So let's just say 100 years, 36 Derby winners have won. That's like 36% that run back in the Preakness, roughly, give or take, just doing a quick estimate there, which is about the percentage of winning favorites in North American racing, 37% around. So the Derby winner performs just as well as any other horse expected to run well in the Preakness as a horse on the third Thistledown today. They win about 37%. So that means it's a true test, right? I mean, numbers don't lie when you talk about, volume like that. And a 36, 37% win rate is good for a favorite. It's right where it should be. And that's what we get with the Preakness. I think we'll get a very fairly run race. I don't think you're going to see Mage bounce to the moon. I think he's going to run his race. And if he runs back to the way he did in Kentucky, Jeff, then we all get excited towards the final leg of the Triple Crown. Let's look back to Mage's Kentucky Derby win. Larry Comas with the call.
Kings Barnes, the undefeated runner for Tom Pletcher, is the leader. Here's two Phils making a move on the inside, and the two of them hook up, and Jareth Loveberry has taken two Phils to the front. And Kings Barnes is running in second. Hickshaw is circled up on the outside as they come to the top of the stretch, and they're into the stretch, and two Phils has turned for home on top. Kings Barnes, here's Mage coming strongly down the outside. Angel of Empire is putting in his run, and there's 1 furlong to run. Two Phils on the inside, trying to hold up Mage. Mage has taken the lead here as they come into the final 16th, and it is going to be Mage to win the Kentucky Derby. And then it was two Phils, Angel of Empire in a photo. Disarm was fourth. Mage has done it in 2:01.57 seconds under Javier Castellano.
So the big win there for Mage. It was funny watching the stretch run there again as you watch these races many times, and you kind of just watch it for what it was, the finish there, not as a trip handicap or anything like that. But I counted 6 horses who were still running at the end. Everybody else was kind of wrapped up and galloping and not running through to the wire there. So the Derby does gas a lot of horses, and that's part of why we don't have a lot of the returnees back. I mean, some of those fringe horses for the Derby who you thought may run back into Preakness, the Cyclone Mischiefs, the King Russells, horses like that may have been back for the Preakness. They just ran so bad in the Derby that you can't possibly come back with them. It's not like they made like a good effort, like a Shackelford running 6th, 7th or something like that.
Right.
And the horses who were in those spots where you say, well, maybe they could come back. Brad Cox had a handful of those. He's not running horses back on short rest. He just doesn't do it. That's not his MO. Todd Pletcher doesn't do that, of course. So he can't bring Forte back, but he's not going to come back with Tappet Trice and his other horses, Kings Barnes, who, spit the bit there. Right. Pletcher doesn't come back. They had the 3 horses from Japan. They went back home. So 10 of the horses in the original entries for the Kentucky Derby were the Japanese, Pletcher, and Cox. That's kind of why we ended up with only 1 horse back in this year's Derby. Disarm was going to try to come back and make a go of it. He obviously did not respond to training because he's not even being pointed to the Belmont now. Right. And then we also had Confidence Game who was pointing for here. So maybe we would have been right in that 3 period where we should have been over the past couple of years. It looks like 3 Derby horses back for the Preakness seems to be about the norm. This feels exceptional this year. Hopefully we'll bounce back next year to more of those. And as for Mage, I think we'll talk a little bit more in the handicapping and the strategies we get through our topics here, Jeff. It's his Preakness to have, right? I mean, it is set up for him to be successful.
I loved his win in the Derby. I really did. I mean, he missed the break. He was 15th by the stands for the first time. That's a tough thing to overcome, especially since he was mired in dirt throughout the whole race until he got out to the top of the stretch. So it wasn't like he had a real easy run at all. And then he kept coming. I thought he would make a big move and then kind of flatten out. He never flattened out. Not only did he not flatten out, but even galloping out, he was in front. It was just a terrific effort. It was a hard race for him. And if he doesn't come back, if it kind of sapped him, then maybe he is vulnerable. But my theory about, reacting or bouncing off a hard race is the good ones can do it. Maybe the cheaper ones can't.
Right.
From what I've seen of Mage, he's a good one, and I think he can take it. And I would love to see him come back and repeat that race because I think, based on what I saw, not just in the Kentucky Derby, but in the Florida Derby, which I'm convinced more than ever he should have won that race if he hadn't been moved too soon. Yeah. This horse has only run 4 times, and he should have had 3 out of 4, and he's won 2 out of 4, but the last 2 races were spectacular, and I don't think there's any reason for me to believe that he's not going to continue to get better as he gets older and stronger, more mature, more experienced. And he's versatile. As you know, Jeremy, he won his debut sprinting on the lead going 7/8, and the Derby he came from 15th. Not too many horses can do that. So I like him to win right back, and I hope that we see a tour de force again from Mage because I want him to be a talking horse for the Belmont because it's always fun when you have your Triple Crown up for grabs or available when the Belmont comes around.
And we don't see a big regression in Derby winners in the Preakness very often. It's the 3rd race where a lot of times the wheels will come off proverbially, and the Belmont where they're exposed for the long campaign. Think California Chrome and some in recent history. But even the Mind That Birds and Giacomos came back and ran well in the Preakness, very well, in fact. So the Derby winner usually comes and shows up. Very few have run poorly. Super Saver in 2010, one that comes to mind that didn't fire at all. Orb did take a step back in the Preakness Stakes, but again, those are more exceptions. I think there are more examples of horses from the Derby that have run well back in the Preakness than have run poorly, so we can expect a good one again from Mage. Let's go to our second topic because yesterday they had the post position draw for Preakness 148. The morning line was set by Keith Fustel. Keith, you can catch in the first Preakness Wager Guide as well. One of our contributors in there was Kelly Francois from the Maryland Jockey Club. Here is the field for the Preakness Stakes with Keith's morning line odds. He's got Mage tabbed as the 8-5 favorite. Second choice, First Mission at 5-2. National Treasure at 4. Blazing Sevens at 6. And then the rest go up into double digits from there. Jeff, we look at this morning line and the post positions. First of all, where do you think any horses may have won or lost in the post draw?
Well, when you only have 8 and you got a mile and 3/16 for the long run of the clubhouse turn, nobody should have any issues. National Treasure, if he wasn't committed to go to the front, he is now from the rail. Right. And that's the only way he can win. In fact, his only win came gate to wire, and that was sprinting at Del Mar. So They won't be waiting around for him. First Mission on the 8-hole, I don't think that's going to be a bad box for him at all, because you've got him, you've got Coffee with Chris, the other speed in there, and then First Mission can kind of draft over and outrun Blazing Sevens and perform in Red Route 1, which he shouldn't have any difficulty doing. By the time they hit the clubhouse turn, he'll be in a great spot, maybe sitting third, and then Mage will draft in and sit fourth. He won't be 15 lengths back as he was, in the Derby early on, and so he's going to have less work to do to catch up. The closers will drop out of it, and then Perform might like fairly close. He could be in the middle somewhere, but I don't think anybody has any complaints here. I mean, you might think that the rail is not a place to be, but I think that's where National Treasure wants to be. I think he needs to be the controlling speed, and from the rail he can kind of dictate that trip and then take his speed and go as far as he can. So I think it's a fair draw, and you'd expect that to be when you only have 8 in the field.
Yeah, and as far as the prices go, Mage at 8-5, First Mission at 5-2. I think that's right about on. It depends how much the public goes on Baffert here and Johnny V with the 4-1 third choice. If National Treasure is a little bit higher, then I think then the weight of that price rise all goes to the 2 favorites, and I think they drop even lower. I could see them at like 7-5, 6-5, and 9-5, 6-5, and 2-1. I would not be surprised if everything in this race, betting wise, goes heavy on the top 2 in here. First Mission for Cox. So you might see him a little bit lower. And I don't know about the tightness, 8-5 versus 5-2. It's not a huge spread in the odds. I don't know how close those 2 are going to be, but I think you're going to see a big gap between First Mission and the rest. I think he is going to be the clear-cut second choice. One of the reasons for that was the Preakness future wagering that closed on Derby Day at 6 o'clock. First Mission was 6-1. He was the second choice in that race. He was 6-1 when there were 29 wagering interest in the future wager pool, and he was just sitting on the sidelines. It wasn't Preakness week yet. That we're going to get any kind of price on him at all. That was a good one to get at 6-1. That was a very good wager. But everybody else compared in this race, Blazing Sevens was 21-1 in the Preakness future wager. Mage was 22-1. So the best bet of the season right now was Mage at about 5.59 on Derby Day. He's a bigger price in the Preakness than he was even in the Derby, right? He was 15-1 on Derby Day. So 22-1 on Mage is a great price. Red Route 1 is 30-1 in the Preakness future wagers. The Change of Chaos, the other horse there from Northern California, he is 60-1 in the Preakness future wager. He'll be probably close to that in the race. Now, the interesting thing with the all other 3-year-olds in the Preakness future wager, you ended up with National Treasure, Perform, and Coffee with Chris, and you got 13-1. So if you got a 3-horse entry in an 8-horse field, 13-1 is not too bad, but you got to beat Brad Cox and you got to beat the Derby winner. So there's still work to do, but you like the 13-1 at least.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing about National Treasure is you can almost gamble on you because you have to handicap not only the race, but who's actually going to be in it. The reason why Mage was a big price is because you figure if he didn't win the Derby, he probably wouldn't be running back like everybody wouldn't be running back. So you got to be in the race. Whereas a horse like National Treasure, and certainly a horse, the First Mission, you knew he was going to be in the race, theoretically that was the intention anyway, and it worked out. So you bet on horse that's going to be in the race. So it's a way of looking at it for sure. But with regards to the closing odds, I think I'll be surprised if Mage goes off at 8-5. I think he'll be lower, and I think First Mission will be the one that people will default to if they want to try to beat the Derby winner. And like I said, I think I know National Treasure because he's been out here. I watch him train. I watch him run him. I just can't wrap it around my head that he's going to be 4-1. I mean, I even talked to Baffert the other day, and I asked him how the horse was doing, and he said, "Oh, he's doing great." I said, "I wish for your sake he was better than he really is." He says, "Oh, he didn't say anything, but he listened to me." I said, "If this was one of your if this was like Cave Rock or somebody, you could kind of grab him and say, okay, I'm going with him, but not right." I think he's probably has a good chance to run third just because I think he's a loose in the lead, controlling speed type of horse. And he is training well. I just don't think of him as being, if he wins the Preakness, I'm saying, Preakness, I'm sorry. I don't think he's that good.
Let's talk contenders and pretenders because you led us into it with the discussion on National Treasure there. Let's take a look at his workout. We've got it at Santa Anita, going solo here with the blinkers on. He will race blinkers on in the Preakness Stakes, a key equipment adjustment.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's actually worn blinkers before on 2 occasions. And he's off and on. He did win his maiden with blinkers on. I'll give him that. He's a good moving horse. And I watched him train before, and I watched him train in the last few weeks, and he's training better. He's training. He looks better in the morning than he used to look. I've never really been that high on him, as I just mentioned. Right. But given the rail position, and really his Santa Anita Derby race wasn't that bad because while he had a good trip and they kind of left him for dead at the top of the stretch, he kind of stayed on better than I thought he would. And in fact, if you want to know the truth, you go back and watch the video. He's actually galloped out in front of everybody past the 7/8 pole. So at least he was trying. He just couldn't quicken when he was supposed to. But if you put him on the lead and they don't respect him, and the only one that I think has a chance to pressure him early, and I don't know how committed they'll be going with Coffee with Chris, he might just say sit second, and maybe they don't touch him to the 3/8 pole. I mean, then it's a different ball game, So under those circumstances, I could see National Treasure, carry his speed farther than a lot of people, including me, might think he will. But he still has to feel the pressure from the quarter pole home, and that's where I think maybe National Treasure might come up a little short. But I could see a scenario where he runs better than I'm thinking that he will.
He's third choice in the morning line. Second choice in the morning line is First Mission. Let's go back and look at his Lexington Stakes win. Kurt Becker on the mic at Keeneland.
Arabian Lion leads at a length and a half. First Mission is second, midway on the far turn. Prairie Hawk is in third. Disarm is fourth, looking for running room. Now goes to third, 3.5 lengths off the lead. Demolition Duke is fourth to his inside, but Arabian Lion leads to the top of the short stretch in the Stone Street Lexington. Arabian Lion with First Mission having plenty of room to the inside and trying to scoot up the rail to challenge Arabian Lion. Close quarters between this pair, then Disarm, and then Dennington. First Mission keeps running up the inside. First Mission grabs the lead. First Mission, Luis Saez to win it. Arabian Lion home second. Disarm was third in 1 minute 43.74 seconds in the Stone Street Lexington.
It's good when you catch a loose leader who has no reason to be beaten. That's a good effort because you're having to do all the work on your own. There was no other horse to soften up Arabian Lion in that race, and First Mission did it in his own, and I think that's a good sign of a good horse. He's a rising player. He, like Mage, very lightly raced, even more lightly raced than Mage to this point now, but he is coming into this Preakness off a very good effort, I think.
I had a hard time grasping that race because it looked to me like Arabian Lion was home free. If you looked at that race at the quarter pole, Jock's kind of sitting on Arabian Lion and First Mission and Saez, they were under a full-out drive. And all of a sudden you look up, you blink, and wait a minute, how did he get up to a head-and-head? I thought it would be the other way around. I thought Arabian Lion would be opening up 5 or 6. So it was kind of weird. At the time, I thought maybe it might have been Arabian Lion coming back to him more than anything else. But then you had Disarm, who was fading third, come back and actually run very well in the Derby. So maybe that was a better race originally than I thought. The 98 buyer number that was assigned to the race was very strong. It was First Mission's just his third career start. So you have to think there's room for further upside. He had won his previous race by many lengths, almost 7 when he broke his maiden. And he's breezed really well since. So that's one of the reasons why I thought First Mission could produce another forward move, kind of like what Mage did, and then maybe give Mage a run for his money, especially with the projected good easy in the clear stalking trip that he's almost certain to get. The only concern I have, one other concern I had is that he was very late changing leads in that race, First Mission. He did finally switch over, but maybe that's just him. We'll find out if First Mission is going to be a serious player in this division from here on in, because there is absolutely no excuse in the world going into this race why he shouldn't run at least as well, if not better than he just ran, which based on what this Disarm did coming out of that race might put him right there. So I think if you like First Mission, you may not like the closing odds that you're going to get. You may feel you deserve to be a little bit higher than he's going to be, but he is a fresh horse, and that's nothing wrong with that. So I'm really curious to see if First Mission can really press Mage. I'm picking Mage, but if you like First Mission, for all the reasons I just mentioned, I'm not going to try to talk you off it because I think he's going to have his chance, every chance, to win the race.
So we talk contenders and pretenders in this part of the deal. National Treasure, we're not sold on as a win contender. Chase the Chaos, obviously, I think is in the pretender category. Coffee with Chris, the local, admirable local horse up to about a mile. I think this is stretching him way too far, but I'm glad he's in the field. Red Route 1, I'm not convinced of, nor Blazing Sevens, Jeff. Any of those horses you think have a serious play, say, for the exacta? I mean, in an 8-horse field, could you see Blazing Sevens or Red Route 1 running third, National Treasure third? Yes. But in terms of the exacta, I'm going to put those in the pretender category for me. Yeah,
there's only one other horse that we have to discuss, and I'm going to let you sing his praises because I know you like him, and I'm not going to disagree with you. I'll give you that stage. But the horses that you just mentioned are throwouts for me. I mean, anybody can run third, I guess, Sure. But if I'm making a serious exacta wager and trying to isolate the second horse, the horses that you mentioned, like Blazing Sevens and Chase the Chaos and Coffee with Chris and Red Route 1, they don't make it. They don't cut the mustard for me.
Right. One horse I want to give an extra look to our viewers is Perform. He won the Federico Tessio most recently. 2 starts back was his wake-up call in winning the maiden race at Tampa. This is a horse with a lot of experience. Took a while. It's that nibbler breaks out angle. The horse who's just kind of been okay. When they finally break their maiden, they do it emphatically. These horses tend to get really good. He's beating a $1.3 million Todd Pletcher horse that runs second in this race. So this was not just your typical Tampa race. Now go to the Tessio. He's in the back on the rail with the red and dirty brown cap. Watch the 7 horse in here. Nowhere to go. Now the 9's almost going to take him into the fence here. He squeezes through, which is good acceleration. Now what I want you to watch is these next couple steps right here. This is an amazing turn and burst to the finish line to win. He beat Coffee with Chris that day. Coffee with Chris is not a win contender in this race, so we're not matching him up based on what we think that race showed in terms of class and strength of schedule. It's the visual of it. Not many horses can make that little joystick move and bam like that, especially at the end of a 1 1/8 at the end of the Federico Tessio Stakes. That wasn't like a mile or something like that. That was a 1 1/8 race. I think Shug McGahee's got this one really good right now, and a couple other factors. Originally, not expected to run in this race. In fact, the officials at the Maryland Jockey Club did not even put him in the Preakness future wager after he won the Tessio. Yes, that was a win in your in race, but he is not Triple Crown nominated. So it took $150,000 to supplement this horse, and then he waives his win in your in. So all the money and all the free ride to the Preakness and everything like that was not a thought beforehand. They did not nominate this horse to the Triple Crown for a pittance, a couple $100, and then $7,000, I think, is the second nomination to the Triple Crown. After that race, this horse has gone from working 50s and 51s to working 48s and 58s for 4 and 5 furlongs. I think he's doing really good. I think Shug got the green light from the owners with the money. And I think he's an interesting horse in here. With Fergal Lynch riding, he rode him expertly at Laurel last time. He gets to stay and keep the call. He rides Pimlico every day, so you get a local pilot, which doesn't hurt. He's a veteran jock, been around forever. Just never had a chance with a big horse like this. I think Perform's got a very interesting shot in this race, Jeff. And dare I say, it is Tuesday as we record our podcast. He's going to be my top choice in the Preakness 148.
Well, you're going to get 15-1, or I don't know if you get more than 15-1, but there's not.
No, 15 seems fair.
I don't think I would never talk you off Perform because he's a progressive colt, and he's from the first crop of Good Magic, of course. Good Magic, also the sire of Mage. And if you're going to the Ammonium 2-year-old training sale on Monday, or if you're going to go in Ocala to buy a 2-year-old or a Keeneland in the fall, and you want to buy a Good Magic, bring your checkbook.
The price went up after this year's price, right?
Curlin, as you know, is one of my favorite sires. He hasn't been spectacular when it comes to being a sire of sires. Most of them need to develop and late developing, and certainly looks like Good Magic is going to get colt set will develop late. But if you want to buy a sire or buy a colt by a sire that's going to get you this kind of horse, a late developer, and certainly Perform is that. Then go for it. But Perform, the thing about him is it took forever to break his maiden, and maybe it's the light switch, or maybe it's what Curlins do. You know this, Jeremy. I mean, it's just the way it is. Forget about this first 6 races. What has he done in his last 2? Broke his maiden at Tampa, confidence building win, comes back and wins at 10-1, and could have won by more than that. Did all of his running in the last 16th of a mile. Training well since. How about a bullet training track work? 47-3, fastest of 59 at Belmont. I mean, this horse couldn't get out of a gallop breezing before he started racing, and that's one of the reasons why they didn't even think he was a good horse. And so now all of a sudden the light switch goes on.
The interesting thing too is we talk about Mage, coming from maiden in late January to the Derby. Right. He ran against Mage in that same maiden race, Perform, and they were neck and neck for the first half mile of the race.
He put him blown out or anything. Exactly.
So I mean, he actually has some speed. He came from off the pace because he stumbled at the start in the Testio. So we'll see where he ends up pace wise in the Derby or in the Preakness, and that's where we go next, is projecting the pace. We've talked about it a lot in the handicapping process to this point, but Jeff and I put a little graphic together, and we're kind of in agreement here, I believe, in how this Preakness race should shape up. National Treasure with blinkers from the rail goes. Coffee with Chris tries to run as far as he can, as fast as he can. First Mission's got all the options, right, Jeff? I mean, he's probably going to, like you said, let the first 2 go, slide over, and can sit third in the pocket. He can go 3 wide if he wants. It's really a good trip for Luis Saez, you would have to think, with First Mission. And just beyond them, you've got Mage and Performer, who have similar amount of speed. We've seen them both from the front, from the back, and we saw them neck and neck with each other in a race in the past. So I put those both in the middle. And then the clear closers in the field look like Blazing Sevens, Chase the Chaos, and Red Route 1. So I think this shapes up a lot simpler, I would say, than the Kentucky Derby. In Derby, we had all the scratches, changes, so many horses. We had the foreign horses. How fast are they really? I think this one sets up a little bit fundamental, if you will, on paper. I think this is pretty close to the way it'll look on the track, but these 1,100-pound animals with big crowds screaming in their ears, they tend to do what they want when the gate opens.
We along with most handicappers thought that the Kentucky Derby pace would be moderate. I wouldn't say slow, but moderate, and they went a whole lot faster than we thought. One of the reasons for that is when you have a big field, everybody sends horses out of the gate because they want to get position. Everybody wants to be sitting third. Only one horse can be sitting third. So you use your horse. But in this race, with only 8 starters and a long run in, there is not going to be the necessity to gun your horse out to get position. You're going to be where you want to be, wherever you want to be, because it's a small field and a long run in. So that usually results in a slower than average pace. So when you project the pace as you did, the only one that I'm absolutely convinced is going, I know he's going, is National Treasure. So he'll be sent out, but I don't think once they get that controlling speed position on the front end, I don't think they're going to go fast. They'll just kind of slow them down a little bit. So that the way you have it set up here with Coffee with Chris sitting second and First Mission folding over third and then Performing Mage, I mean, it's going to be a blackboard type of race, which is in a way good because everybody's going to have a fair shot. Nobody's going to have any complaints. Now, you might say, oh, it never works out that way. Well, sometimes it doesn't. But I think in this case, if you're trying to predict the race, you got to expect this is the way it's going to set up.
Whether it actually sets up this way or not, when races do set up this way, it's that I call it the eye of the die, like the 5 die, right? When you have you roll the dice and you see a 5, right? There's 2 on top, 1 in the middle, 2 behind, right? That 1 in the middle is the eye of the die, the way I call it. And First Mission, when you get that eye of the die trip where The good horses are behind you. The horses in front of you, you really don't have that much respect for. And you're able to sit there, just sitting there third, loping along down the back stretch. You got 2 in front of you. You can take them whenever you want. And the 2 behind you are the better horses in the race that you have to worry about. You've already got a couple length jump on them. That Eye of the Die, the 5 Die, that is a great trip to have. And I think that's what First Mission's going to get. So that's going to make him, if it works out that way. Now, maybe somebody else gets that kind of trip. Maybe the race doesn't set up that way. But when you watch horse races and you see that 2 in the front, somebody comfortable, and then others right behind them, that is the best trip of all in horse racing. Right. I think you could just, other than flat out lone speed and nobody pressing you, which is the ultimate trip. Let's go to our 5th and final topic this week on It's Official. Our Preakness edition extends into Friday's main event, the Black Eyed Susan Stakes. Big card on Friday at Pimlico. Feza, undefeated from Southern California. She gets introduced to the national audience for the first time leaving SoCal, Jeff, but it's not like she's only run at Santa Anita. She's run at Del Mar. She's run at Los Al. She's run at Santa Anita. She takes her track with her with a 5-for-5 record. She's the 7-5 morning line favorite on Keith Fustel's odds projection here. And I see no reason why she won't be that price or lower.
Well, I mean, she's a good filly. And the one thing about her, she's 5-for-5, but unlike a lot of 2-year-old fillies turning 3, and we'll talk about one with Hoosier Filly in a minute. But when fillies go the other way, or they don't come back and develop, they usually are done. That's just the way it is. I mean, you don't see a great 2-year filly go sour and then come back, and sometimes it happens. But Feza has never failed to produce a forward move in every one of her races. Her numbers continue to rise with each start. She was always well regarded. She's been a favorite in every race she's run. But you talk about a filly who not only is racing well, but she's training unbelievable. She's the filly in the middle with the jock with the yellow hat. You can't look any better than this. And she was May 12th. What is it? This is just a few days ago, actually, on Saturday. And she's a happy, bouncy filly. She's eager. She's sharp. Minute and 2/5 as easy as you could get. Big, good-looking filly. And look, she's not a Johnny-come-lately. She's a daughter of Gervin. $725,000 2-year-old in training purchase by Gervin. Nobody knew who Gervin was at the time, and so you can just imagine what kind of an exceptional individual she is and how she breathes and how impressive she is, and she has done nothing wrong. I just think Feza has had the benefit, really, of not having a hard race. That hasn't stunted her growth. I think she's fantastic.
What to make of Hoosier Filly? She was so good last year, winning the Goldenrod at Churchill. If you talk to anybody over the winter, she was the favorite for the Kentucky Oaks, and things just did not turn out well for her at Fairgrounds. But she's got a couple bullet workouts since missing the Kentucky Oaks, not drawing into the field on the also eligible list. Is Hoosier Filly about to wake back up with a little bit of a drop in class? Not taking on Feza being a drop in class. Feza might be the best filly she's ever run against, and she's run against some good ones, including Pretty Mischievous, who won the Kentucky Oaks. What do we make of Hoosier Filly? You said sometimes these fillies just never get it back.
Well, first of all, she trained really well, just as fast before the Fairgrounds Oaks, and after the Rachel Alexandra, we thought, well, okay, she didn't get out good, and she may have been short, and then she comes back and she breezes in 59 and change and whatever. It looks good. And that's one of the reasons why there were a lot of people who were willing to just draw a line through her Rachel Alexandra disappointment. She was 6-5 in that race. She actually ran worse, And one thing about Hoosier Filly, if you go back and watch her races, as I did, sometimes you can get fooled. And you can fool me. I'm not hard to fool sometimes. And she was winning these races just in the bit, just breezing, and sometimes when you are forced to turn them loose, which she never really had to do as a 2-year-old, you find out there's nothing left to turn loose with, and every time they started deriding her, you'd expect her to pick it up, and she never did. And maybe she's one of these fillies that just fooled everybody. I don't know. Now she continues to breeze well because it's not a race. She's never being put under pressure. They're not asking her to quicken. And as long as she's doing this, she's fine. But when you have to ask her to quicken, that's where she just kind of goes, waves the white flag. So until such time as she proves to me she can do that, I'm off her bandwagon, and I was on it. Trust me, I was. And I think Tom Amos was too. There is a filly in this race, however, that I really would wish to sing the praises of, Jeremy, and that's in addition to Feza. And I think Merlaza is a fantastic prospect because unlike Hoosier Filly, she can overcome trouble. She can quicken on a dime. And this is a daughter of Medaglia d'Oro who got beat ahead in her debut and really ran a winning race. She was 10 lengths clear of everybody else, first time out sprinting. Since then, she's won by 3. She won by 3. She won a race at Oaklawn Park by a length. She was many, many lengths the best in that race. Yeah. She was bottled up between horses every step of the way, had nowhere to go. She was keen, trying for room. She had a horse in front of her, 2 horses on the side, horse behind her. She was in a box, and a lesser horse would have just gotten mad. Finally, she got loose at the top of the stretch to the short wire at Oaklawn Park, and she went from 4 or 5 lengths back to win under a hand ride with a ton left. That's a very good filly. Now, she's not as fast as Feza is, and maybe she's not quite where Feza is now, but to me, Merlaza, she's dangerous, and to me, it's a 2-horse race. Feza, who I know is training great, and Merlaza, who may be great. Those are the 2 that I think are going to leave this field far behind.
Brad Cox, Merlaza's trainer, won this race last year with Interstate Daydream, and you talked about that Medaglia d'Oro sire for Merlaza. How many great 3-year-old fillies has he had over the years? Rachel Alexandra, Plum Pretty, Songbird. I mean, we talked about some of the greats of the last 20 years by Medaglia d'Oro in their 3-year-old filly seasons have just been spectacular. This could be the coming out party for Merlaza. Could be the coming out party nationally as well for Feza. Those 2, the 2 big headliners in Friday's George Mitchell Black-Eyed Susan Stakes at Pimlico. We hope that you enjoyed today's podcast, video version. Again, we do this every Tuesday. If you like to listen along, you can also catch it through various podcast channels as well. And for our Friday handicapping podcast each week, we're going to move it up a day this week. So I want to give you a programming note. Our weekend first call podcast will be taped on Thursday this week because of the big Black-Eyed Susan card on Friday and then Preakness Day Saturday. So Jeff and I will look at 8 stakes races from a handicapping standpoint. We gave you our Preakness and Black-Eyed Susan thoughts here today, but 8 stakes races between the 2 days on Friday and Saturday will be a part of that podcast on Thursday. So be sure to check it out at the same channels where you follow. It's official. So the first call podcast will be out on Thursday. Also want to thank everybody who listened in on the first Preakness wager guide. Scroll through the guide. Check out all the picks. You got Millie Ball picked the $30 winner in the Kentucky Oaks. She's got her analysis all queued up and ready to go in the Preakness wager guide for the Black-Eyed Susan Stakes. Let's see if she's got another $30 winner in her. Eddie Olczyk, Jeff, myself, all the handicappers around the first family of racetracks providing their analysis and picks. And we've got the First Bet artificial intelligence information as well in that first Preakness wager guide. If you're just watching this on a various channel and you want to check out the wager guide, it'll be available for viewing and such about 5 o'clock Eastern on Tuesday. Expect it to go live at that point, and you'll be able to go to first.com/guide and check it out, or just go to news.first.com and there's a wager guide button on the right side of the page. You can check it out there as well. On behalf of everybody with First and my partner, Jeff Siegel, Jeff, I'm going to give you the last word. I'm Jeremy Plonk. Have a great Preakness, everybody. Jeff, send them home with a winner.
A winner? Well, I'm going to go with Mage. And I'll tell you what about Mage. I want him to win because nothing is greater in this sport than having a Triple Crown at stake. And if he wins, he will. It'll make Belmonte special, and so that's what I'm rooting for. I don't know if he's a great gamble, but I do expect him to win. I know that if I don't win, I hope your 15-1 shot wins, Jeremy. So, there we go. I like him too. So good racing, great racing coming up. In terms of the weather, there's a chance for showers on Saturday. Not any kind of heavy downpour or anything like that. But Friday's Black-Eyed Susan card will be good, and some really good stakes races, really good racing at Pimlico, and wish everybody well. And we'll talk to you Thursday with our selections for those 2 days.
All right. Good luck, everybody. Hi ho, Pimlico. Preakness 148.